Okay guys, I'm just doing a few bits to this Ferrari, a bit of polishing, a bit of touching up, a few stone chips here and there. This video is going to be how to try and hide and repair without painting this kind of road rash, which is quite prone on these down the side of the car. Obviously you get it on the front bumpers a lot, so this might be a really cool little tip for you guys to try and mask it without having to paint it. So we'll see what we can do. So for this trick you need some solvent paint. This is that colour mixed up for this car. It doesn't have to be exact as long as it's something close. Sometimes it's better to go slightly darker than the colour, but on this one we're using the actual paint which has been mixed up. Obviously you've got a buffer, some polish, a rag for wiping off the polish obviously, and then just an old cloth or an old rag for, well, you're going to see what we use this for in a minute. Right, we've got all this road rash on here, so we'll start with this panel, and all it really is we're just going to pour some of the solvent paint onto the rag, and then we're just going to simply rub it into the chips like this. Doesn't have to be pretty, there's not any particular method, just make sure you rub it all inside the chips, all over the road rash, like so. Some of these bigger chips, just dip your finger in, just give it a little rub around like that. Obviously the thicker you put it on, the harder it is going to be to get it off. Okay. So you can sort of layer it up if you think there's an area that's going to be more heavily road rash and chipped than the others. It's exactly the same process with front bumpers, which obviously receive a lot of chip damage at the front end. I'm just going over this section again because this is where it's most heavily peppered. Okay, I think that'll do. So it dries almost instantly anyway, so there's not really any drying time as such. Just leave it a few minutes to, obviously it does dry on the surface, just leave it a few minutes before we take it to the next stage. So now that stage is done, we're going to move on to the next stage of the process. It's dried on the surface now, so we're okay to move on. I recommend using an old polishing pad for this because it's probably going to wreck it with regards to normal polishing and swirl removal. I wouldn't recommend using it after this, so yeah, it's half wrecked anyway, this one, and it tends to work a bit better when it's a bit rougher anyway. And obviously we're going to need some kind of buffing machine. Rotary works better, doesn't have to be an expensive one, it can just be any rotary machine. Okay, so the next stage is to hit this whole area that we've covered in paint where all the chips were. We're going to hit it with a good quality polish and the pad on the rotary machine, and we're going to start buffing it off. So the trick is with this, really, use plenty of polish, don't get the panel too hot. We're just literally buffing it off the top of the surface. As I say, it's always a good idea to use plenty of compound and polish with this process, otherwise it tends to clog up. And when you're first putting the polish on, you've got it at its most abrasive, so if it gets too hot or the polish has broke down too much, you're going to struggle to remove the paint off the surface. So it's always a good idea to keep topping up with polish, which is unlike normal polishing, but we're not doing normal polishing, we're trying to remove all this paint that was spread on it. As with any polishing, it's a good idea to always keep the buffing machine moving, whether it's a DA or a rotary. Obviously a rotary is cut quicker and work faster, but they also make the panel hotter. So obviously what we want to try and avoid is, of course, burning through the paint or causing a snag in the paint. Okay, that's looking pretty good, so we're going to continue with the rest of it. Okay, so that's all been polished off with the compound, so one thing we can do now is we can use a finishing polish. So that's already looking pretty good. It's got most of the chips out. It's really took your eye off it, so it's really benefited the car. There's a few slightly larger chips that are still visible. It's up to you. You can leave them or you can perhaps touch them in. A good quality solvent paint mixed up to the colour of the car, obviously, from the paint code. I'm going to be using Paint Gear's touch-up system for this car. High quality paint, solvent based. It comes as a kit, and it's down to personal preference what you touch things up with, but the Paint Gear touch-up range and their brushes, fantastic for touching small, medium chips up. So we just want to get some in a pot. It's quite a big chip on this door edge. So there we go, guys, the finished results. I think you'll agree, it's made a huge difference. You know, it's not perfect, but it's cost virtually nothing. it saves from having a respray, so it keeps the factory paint, and it looks a million times better. And it didn't take a long time either.